family. It's your sister, Reverend Jocelyn, and welcome to another episode of Faith on the Journey. If this is your first time tuning in, we welcome you. We're so glad that you are here and want you to know that we're committed to helping you strengthen your faith, heal your heart, and discover a sense of community. And we do so through a variety of ways by connecting you with a team of Christian counselors and offering trauma healing trainings across the country. You can learn about these resources and so much more by visiting our website at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that is faithonthejourney.org. Now, today I'm excited to share with you something that I've learned recently and have started adopting in my life and is making a tremendous difference. And I learned this by attending a recent retreat with my mastermind community a few weeks ago. My coach, Andy Enriquez, was leading a session and he was talking about how we can do certain things that can significantly change the trajectory of our lives. And he asked us a question. He asked the group, "Do you know what the two most sacred hours of the day are?" And people had different responses. Some people's like 5 o'clock in the morning. Some people said 3 a.m. in the morning. I'm like, who's up at that time? But hey, do what you do. But people had different responses. But then he was like, okay, those are, good hours to keep sacred. But he suggested to us that the two most sacred hours of the day is the first hour that you wake up and the hour right before you go to sleep. And I'm like, that makes tremendous sense. And I paused and I began to reflect on how in the past I had been spending those hours. For me, I had a really bad habit of sleeping with my phone right next to me before going to bed. And as soon as I would wake up, I would check this phone. I would go onto my email in the bed, start responding to email messages, seeing what was on the news, maybe checking social media. And sometimes I might see something that's going on in the world or going on at work, and it would just thrust me into this like active state of just crazy versus me keeping that hour sacred. And in the same time, doing similar things at night, where instead of taking time to wind down and reflect on the day, I'm literally having my laptop in the bed, working, doing my things, still, focusing on the world, not having a path to shutting down or communing with God. And then I pass out. None of which sounds great, sacred, and none in which is allowing me to prioritize the things that would help to set the pace, the flow of my day. And as he began to teach on this concept of a sacred hour, I got some of these concepts in my mind. I said, yes, if I do get this sacred hour, when I do get these sacred hours to a place where I'm intentional, where I protect them, where I put those priorities in place for my both spiritual, mental, and physical health, and make sure that I am using that time to steward those three areas of my life, it can change everything for me. And that's what I want to talk about with you today is how are you spending those two sacred hours? Now, I actually want to start off with the evening sacred hour because I've realized that if your evening sacred hour is messed up, then it's going to impact your morning. I often say your morning starts at night because if you're up late at night, if you are doing certain things that interrupt your ability to get a good night's sleep, then the next morning, you're going to be groggy, that is. You're going to have a possibly mood. You're not going to be able to focus because you didn't get a proper night's rest. So let's talk about the sacred hour at night. As I mentioned, many of us might have certain habits of doing certain things in the evening that actually can interrupt our rest. And I want to cover a couple of those things with you that are things that you want to consider changing because it can actually impact your sleep quality. Many of us, when it comes to sleep, our sleep is not optimal. We might pass out, so technically we're sleeping, but we're actually not getting a good night's sleep. I want you to think about this. Has there been times in the past where you actually did get 8 to 10 hours of sleep, but you still felt when you woke up like walking dead? Like you got hit by a Mack truck. And you're like, but I slept. Well, it's probably because you didn't get a good night's sleep. You didn't get quality sleep. And your sleep can be interrupted by a number of things. One, for those of us who enjoy caffeine, a good cup of coffee, or maybe some of us like the energy drinks and things like that, we might actually, some of us have a caffeine addiction and we just throw back that coffee or whatever we do like it's water. Well, we want to be mindful of our caffeine intake because it actually can impact us in different ways. And particularly, we want to consider cutting off our caffeine intake at a certain time because caffeine stays in our body at least for 6 hours, sometimes more. So if you have a cup of coffee or energy drink at 5 o'clock at night, guess what's going to happen to you? You still gonna be like this. If you all can't see me, my eyes are like bug-eyed right now. You're gonna be like this still at 11 o'clock at night, and you wonder why it's hard for you to go to sleep. So consider possibly saying, okay, by 2 p.m. or by 1 p.m., that is my cutoff time for having anything that's caffeine related so that I can begin to let that caffeine work through my system. And by the time I'm ready to go to sleep, I'm able to finally rest. All right. So that's number one. Next, think about what you eat at night. When you have your dinner, when you have certain foods that are highly carb filled or has a lot of sugar, it can actually impact your sleep quality. And so think about maybe having something that's on a lighter side during the times of dinner so that you can get your body at a place where it's getting ready to go into that rest mode. The next one is our screen time. I spoke of this earlier, how I've had habits of working with my laptop in bed or having my phone right next to me and scrolling, just scrolling and having TV on. If you have a TV in your bed, you can have the TV playing until you fall asleep. All of that is blue light exposure. And what we don't realize often is that blue light exposure is interrupting our ability to have good sleep quality if we have it right before we go to sleep. And there's a ton of research out there about this. I'm going to share some resources with you so you can learn more. But trust me, we want to reduce the amount of blue light exposure we have right before bed. So 30 to 60 minutes, detox any tablets or things that can expose us to blue light. Next, I think it's important for us to consider having a wind down routine. That thing that we do that just rests our body. So consider maybe a bubble bath. Maybe it's something that we do like light stretching. Maybe it's reading a book, whatever that thing is that helps us to get to a place of calm. One of my biggest challenges is someone being an entrepreneur and a creative. I consistently find my mind just kind of like on the go, constantly just moving. And so winding my mind down and essentially taking those things that have been stressing me out throughout the day and saying, okay, I'm just calming down. I'm getting myself ready to go to sleep is a process where I have to be intentional around that. And for you, that might also require a level of maybe meditation, prayer, reflection. These are different things to kind of help us to wind ourselves down. And that kind of brings me to my next point. Sometimes it's difficult for us to go to sleep because we have this mental overload going on. And if you have a lot on your mind, you want to identify ways in which you can get this stuff out of here and maybe get it onto paper, maybe talk it out. Maybe if you have a spouse, you could say, hey, honey, this is how my day went. This is some things on my mind, and just kind of get it off of you. Or write it in a journal, write it as a prayer to God, talk to God. But working on different ways to get rid of that mental overload right before we go to sleep can help us so that we can wind down and get a good night's rest. I also want you to know that when we neglect to go to sleep by a certain time, it impacts the quality of our sleep. There's research that shows that going to sleep between or being in bed before 10 o'clock, it makes a difference because between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. is considered that money time sleep. That's the sleep where you get more bang for your buck. We can feel more energized. That's the time when all the restoration and healing's taking place in our body. And so when we say, oh, I'm going to stay up until midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, it's actually cutting into that money time sleep. So, how can we adjust our schedules so that we can get to bed earlier? And that might require you making some changes and talking to family and saying, hey, let's find ways in which we can have dinner a little earlier. Let me just make some adjustments or put the kids to bed earlier, whatever the case is, so that you can be asleep by that money time so you can be well rested. Now, I want to give you some examples of things that you can do going back to the sacred hour at night, because we talked about some things that relates to your sleep quality. But I also want to talk about some examples of things that you can do within that sacred hour so that you can wind yourself down, get to bed, and really kind of focus on that holistic work that we mentioned earlier. So maybe, for example, when you know it's the hour before you go to bed, maybe like 8:45 at night, you're like, okay, this is when I'm cutting down all screen time. I'm putting my phone up for the day. I'm turning off the TV, computer, laptop is closed. And so you're saying, okay, no blue light. I'm starting my blue light detox. Then maybe you find yourself a bath and you warm up a nice bubble bath, Epsom salt bath, and just soak for a little bit, relax your muscles. And then you put candles on, and you also put blackout curtains on your windows to kind of get the room dark, because that makes a difference in terms of your bedroom. And so you set your bedroom so it's dark, got the candles going. Then you say, okay, after you get out the bath, maybe you do some journaling, praying, reflecting on your day, maybe reading some good scripture to just reflect and fill your cup with the word. And then after that, maybe you just go to sleep. I don't know. Maybe you have some other things that you do in there, but whatever it is things to help you to wind down. At that last hour, you want to feel those things that help you to be at a good place of release, reflection, and restoration so that you can get that Sabbath rest. I want to share with you a great resource that speaks in depth to the things that I was mentioning throughout the beginning of this episode, and that is Sleep Smarter by Sean Stevenson. That book is amazing. It talks about the connection between our sleep and our health. And he talks about how these things that we're doing here, some of the things I suggested, and he mentions so much more in his book, will not only help us with our sleep quality, but it is kind of like a ripple effect in all these other areas of our lives. So I highly recommend that book for your nighttime reading or whenever you read, to help you to identify things that you can do within that sacred hour of your day to help you to rest well. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And then when we come back, now we're going to talk about the sacred hour in the morning to help you to command your day. So I'll see you in a few.
I'll never forgive you for what you did to me.
I feel so dirty.
I just don't know who I am anymore.
I can't believe I'll never see him again. I've got to be strong for my family.
I can't let them see me cry.
What happens in this house stays in this house.
I can't take this anymore. I feel like I'm living my entire life behind a mask.
The mask is the keeper of secrets and master of illusions. It despises authenticity, fears transparency, and knows no vulnerability. The mask will stop at nothing to keep its image intact and emotions at bay. In its simplest form, the mask is the facade we project to the world. But what is hidden in the dark will come to light. Even if we master the art of wearing the mask, the pain that we've buried has the power to hold us captive in the shackles of shame, anger, and despair. But there is power greater than our pain, greater than our past and greater than what the world says about us. There is a God who can heal us from our pain and can free us from defining our values based on the world's standards. There is hope, and you can embark on your journey towards freedom by reading the book Breaking the Power of the Mask by author and motivational speaker Jocelyn Jones. Discover the joy and healing that rightfully belongs to you. No more shame, no more fear, and no more hiding behind the mask.
I'm breaking the power.
I'm breaking the power.
I'm breaking the power of the mask.
Get your copy today by visiting breakingthemask.com.
Welcome back from our commercial break. Now we are exploring in this episode the 2 sacred hours of the day. Now, the first half of this segment, we focused on the evening sacred hour and how we want to develop a evening routine that allows us to wind down and prepare ourselves to get good rest, because we understand that our morning actually starts at night. Because if we don't do a good job of protecting our evenings and we just pass out and we have the TV on and lights on and everything, it's going to interrupt the quality of our rest. And we're going to wake up the next morning feeling like a zombie, needing to have this caffeine, because otherwise we're going to be like in that Snickers commercial where we grumpy and just crazy because we haven't gotten proper rest. And we want to avoid that. And so we set this evening routine, and then we wake up with intentionality to begin our sacred morning. And this routine is one in which we want to protect at all costs, because it allows us, if we are intentional with this, to be proactive versus reactive. My coach, Andy, he talked about how if we can identify ways in which we can feed 3 core areas of our lives, mind, body, and spirit, during that first hour of the day, it sets the trajectory of everything else for us. So let's think about that. In the morning, instead of us waking up to social media, to checking our phone, what we can do is instead say, okay, this morning I'm waking up with the focus of first communing with my creator, having a conversation with God. God, thank you. Thank you for waking me up to see another day. God, I just ask that you just prepare me for what's ahead, Lord. Help to guard my mind, my thoughts, my actions. Help me to be more like you. Help me to create impact in this world. And you're setting your intentions for the day. You might be reading your I am statements. One thing that I'm doing regularly is writing out my I am statements of who I am in Christ, who I am as a influencer, who I am, as a woman of God, my values, the things that I see, the things that God calls me as daughter. So maybe you begin your day with this spiritual practice of prayer and reading scripture and feeding yourself on the word, because this is what I do know, that sometimes life throws you curveballs, and sometimes there's things that happen throughout the day that's difficult. And if we don't put on our spiritual armor first thing in the morning to prepare us to go out into this world, then it's kind of like we're going out naked. We're not protected. And I also know this, there's times in which when I am just thrusting myself into the world without spending time with God, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm saving time by skipping my prayer time or skipping my meditation time. I'm actually doing the reverse, because God can show us a way to do things more wisely, can show us to do things in a way that saves time if we're connected to our source. But oftentimes we can get so caught up in the rigmarole that we're not connecting to our creator. So this is why we want to identify time at the beginning of our day within that first sacred hour to commune with God, to get our nourishment. And maybe for you, that might be not only reading scripture, maybe you're listening to a sermon in the morning, and whatever your spiritual practice is, a devotional. But that time is key. So first, we want to feed our spirit. Next, what are you doing to feed your body? First, I highly suggest you go to sleep the night before with a bottle of water or something for you to drink. I suggest water when you wake up in the morning. And so it's right there. Your alarm clock goes off. You get to drink, you hydrate yourself. And so that's something that we're doing right away for our body. Then movement. Movement is key. I'm not always able to get to the gym, but I have a little trampoline in the house and I do rebounding to get my lymphatic system going. And I'll do the rebounding for 10 minutes just to get some movement going, do some push ups, just something for activity. And when I'm in warmer environments or when it's springtime or summertime in the Chicagoland area, I'll take a walk outside. Oh man, how I love taking a walk. And that allows for me to not only just take in the scenery and commune with God, sometimes I'll do the physical by walking, but then I'll feed the last part of myself, which is my mental, my mind, by listening to an audiobook or a podcast while I'm taking a walk or going to the gym. I'll do the same versus listening to music while I'm at the gym. I'll listen to an audiobook or podcast that allows for me to get the physical activity in during the first hour of the day while also stimulating my mind. And I tell you, every time I do this, where I fellowship with my creator, I do something that's physical, and I feed my mind, that my whole day is different. I'm excited, I'm intentional. I'm like, "Yes, I could do this." I'm ready for whatever comes my way. But that's because I was proactive versus being reactive with my day. And so I had to make some changes. And sometimes it's still tempting. Sometimes I default to old ways of accidentally having my phone next to me. I haven't reached a point of arrival because this is something where I have recently started to break these habits that I've had for over 10 years, right? But what I have done is invested in this old school alarm clock. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, you see I got that like old alarm clock that was on the show in Chicago called The Awakening. Those Chicago people know what I'm talking about. This alarm clock that has the bell. And so I have this alarm clock that I go to sleep right next to me with. And this allows me to have this wake me up versus using my phone as the alarm clock. Because with my phone as the alarm clock, I ended up checking my phone as a default when it's right there. So this was an intentional shift that I put into place to help me to break that particular habit. Another thing that I have done is just made it a point to prioritize certain things publicly. So I have a community of women who I coach in my membership community, and I shared with them the sacred hour. I actually shared with them we're in the middle of a challenge where we're reporting in regularly about, hey, how are we doing on our sacred hour? This is what I'm planning to do. This is how I'm changing my habits, and having that public accountability. Maybe even if you have an accountability partner or a spouse or whoever, if you let other people know these are the changes I'm making, it can help to say, okay, I'm not going to continue to default to these old ways. I'm going to adjust and shift these things and make this a priority, because here is the thing, and I'm going to read this. The ripple effect of the sacred hour. The sacred hour impacts your day. Your day shapes your week. Your weeks build your month. Your months transform your year. Your years create your life. We see that this is more than just about a sacred hour or 2 hours of the day. When we are at a place where we're intentional about how we rest, we are intentional about how we start our day, it can completely change how the rest of our lives look. So, will you take the challenge with me? If so, first, I want you to put a comment below if you're watching this on YouTube saying, I'm taking the Sacred Hour Challenge. If you are also listening to this on Apple Podcasts, leave a comment. In the comment or review, let us know that this episode actually impacted you and you are going to do something differently as a result of listening to this episode. Also, if you're at a place where you're like, Jocelyn, I hear you and all, but I am so stressed out. I'm so busy. I don't even know how to prioritize my day. Well, first, I encourage you to listen to my previous episode, 2 episodes ago, on spending your time wisely. That will help. But also, I encourage you to reach out to one of our Christian counselors to help you to navigate some of the adjustments that you might make so that you actually can prioritize these 2 sacred hours. And if you're looking for a Christian counselor, you can visit our website at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that is faithonthejourney.org to learn more about how we can support you. So I hope you were blessed by today's episode, and I hope you take the challenge with me. And that is it for today. So until next time, you stay encouraged and you continue to keep your faith on the journey. I'll see you soon, family.